This is CBN NewsWatch.
Thanks for joining us for this first edition of CBN NewsWatch for Wednesday, July 10th. I'm Mark Martin. Today, Democratic disunity as the growing feud is breaking out into public between House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and socialist freshman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and other new left-wing members. Obamacare on the ropes? Federal judges appear sympathetic to Republican arguments that the health care laws should be overturned. Should the government use facial recognition technology? Why some are calling it a profound threat. And a potentially major archaeological find in Israel, an Old Testament town where David fled from King Saul. Those stories and more today on Newswatch. We begin with the disunity among congressional Democrats and how it could hurt them with voters, as House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and freshman member Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez have been criticizing each other publicly in what some are calling a power struggle. It began with Pelosi's rebuke of Ocasio-Cortez in an interview with the New York Times, saying she and three other female left-wing freshmen have their Twitter world but don't have any following. For Ocasio-Cortez's fans, that was a slap against the four liberal freshmen who are all women of color. Some moderate Democrats don't want the left wing to be the face of the party, fearing it could hurt them in next year's elections. But liberal activists worry that moderate views won't energize voters in 2020. And in the Democratic presidential race, former Vice President Joe Biden and his wife Jill took in more than $15 million since leaving the Obama White House, according to documents released Tuesday. That moves him up to millionaire status and puts a dent in the working class image he's encouraged over the decades, often calling himself middle-class Joe. It's just the latest development in the Democratic race for the presidential nomination, with one candidate dropping out and another throwing his hat into the ring just hours later. Amber Strong brings us the story.
With the debate just weeks away, some names are looking to make a fresh appeal to voters, while another is moving on.
There will be a time when you believe everything is over. That will be the beginning.
At least one thing is over, his run for the White House. California Congressman Eric Swalwell left this contest Monday and will refocus on pursuing his fifth term in Congress.
We understand, it's a steep hill, but we want to give it our best shot.
Former Colorado Governor John Hickenlooper is still battling it out, although his run is steeper after his campaign manager, spokesperson, and financial director all jumped ship.
You're going to have jobs again, I promise you.
Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, who's still polling at less than 1%, is still swinging with a fresh ad campaign targeted at key Rust Belt states. As VP Joe Biden still tops the polls, his debate clash with Senator Kamala Harris over his work with segregationists may have cost him.
Was I wrong a few weeks ago to somehow give the impression to people that I was praising those men who I successfully opposed time and again? Well, yes, I was.
That apology could be too little too late. According to a new Morning Consult poll, Biden dropped 8% with African-American voters since the debate. Former colleagues and supporters say don't sell the former VP short.
I think you will underestimate Joe Biden at your own peril. And one thing I'll say about Kamala Harris, and I said this before, she's got game.
And just when you thought it was over, billionaire Tom Steyer reversing his decision not to run and announcing his candidacy Tuesday. Steyer will reportedly use $100 million of his own money to fund his campaign. Amber Strong, CBN News, Washington.
A federal appeals court panel appeared sympathetic Tuesday to Republican efforts to overturn Obamacare. The case was heard by three judges from the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, and they expressed skepticism about Democratic calls to overturn the ruling of a Texas judge who found Obamacare unconstitutional. The judges focused on whether Obamacare lost its legal justification after President Trump signed a law in 2017 that eliminated the tax penalty that enforced Obamacare's mandate that all Americans buy health insurance. Whatever the court decides, the case could go to the Supreme Court. The dispute over whether to add a citizenship question to the 2020 census is heating up. A top civil attorney told Attorney General William Barr that multiple people on the team preferred not to continue with the case. But a U.S. district judge ruled it too late for the Justice Department to replace 9 lawyers. President Donald Trump tweeted about the judge's decision, writing, "So now the Obama-appointed judge on the Census case, are you a citizen of the United States, won't let the Justice Department use the lawyers that it wants to use? Could this be a first?" Numerous states and municipalities across the country have challenged the government's announcement early last year that it intended to add the citizenship question to the census for the first time since 1950. The arrest of wealthy financier on sex crimes has also become a major political issue in Washington, and it's brought the issue of sex trafficking to the forefront as well. Charlene Aaron has that story.
A 2007 plea deal that allowed multi-millionaire Jeffrey Epstein to walk free after 13 months is coming under scrutiny, and it's spotlighting Labor Secretary Alexander Acosta, the U.S. Attorney for Florida at the time. Epstein is charged with running a sex trafficking ring. A federal indictment charges he sexually exploited and abused dozens of minor girls, some as young as 14. President Trump pressed about his relationship with Epstein, a man he once praised, but eventually barred from his Mar-a-Lago estate.
He was a fixture in Palm Beach. I had a falling out with him a long time ago. I don't think I've spoken to him for 15 years. I wasn't a fan.
Former President Clinton, who also knew Epstein, saying he knows nothing about the terrible crimes and that he has not spoken to Epstein in well over a decade. Democrats are calling on Acosta to resign for his role in granting Epstein immunity years ago in a similar case in Florida in 2007.
I pled guilty to solicitation of prostitution.
If he refuses to resign, President Trump should fire him.
Acosta tweeted about the new charges, saying, "The crimes committed by Epstein are horrific, and I am pleased that New York prosecutors are moving forward with the case based on new evidence." According to the Miami Herald, most of Epstein's victims came from disadvantaged families, single-parent homes, or foster care. On CBN's NewsWatch program, Lila McElwaite of Exodus Cry, a nonprofit committed to abolishing sex trafficking, said traffickers are often people no one expects.
They're people who are in business and government and the clergy and positions of authority in our society a lot of the time.
McElwaite says language needs to be more direct when it comes to victims and traffickers.
Calling men who buy sex customers, thinking of traffickers and pimps as just ordinary businessmen. And it's a truly sinister movement to try and normalize prostitution, which we know is a system of exploitation of the most vulnerable in our midst, especially children.
Meanwhile, President Trump says he'll look closely surrounding the 2007 plea deal, but for now, he's standing by Secretary Acosta. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Republican lawmakers in Virginia adjourned a special legislative session just a few hours after it began Tuesday. The session, which focused on gun control, was called by Democratic Governor Ralph Northam after 12 people were shot and killed at the Virginia Beach Municipal Center in May. Some Virginia Republicans say the governor was trying to use the tragedy for political gains. The political struggle will likely make the battle over gun laws a major issue in Virginia's off-year elections. Republicans currently have a narrow majority. An advocacy group is calling for a ban on the U.S. government's use of facial recognition technology. Federal authorities are reportedly using this surveillance technology to scan millions of Americans' faces without their consent. Now, the nonprofit group Fight for the Future says the surveillance technology poses, quote, a profound threat. We need to ban it entirely. Ohio Republican Jim Jordan spoke out last month against the use of facial recognition surveillance.
20 states have given their Bureau of Motor Vehicles, Department of Motor, the database, driver's license database, they've just given access to that to the FBI. No individual signed off on that when they renewed their driver's license, got their driver. They didn't sign any waiver saying, oh, it's okay to turn my information, my photo over to the FBI. No elected officials voted to allow that to happen.
The FBI and Immigration and Customs Enforcement agencies, according to the Washington Post, are mining state driver's license databases and DMV records of American citizens. Coming up, a well-known Old Testament location has apparently been found in Israel, the Philistine city of Ziklag, where David hid from King Saul. We'll have that story when we come back.
Introducing the CBN Bible from CBN.com. Now, an easier way to study the Bible and grow in your faith. Highlight your favorite verse. Read separate versions at a glance. Click and read a commentary. Or cross-reference your favorite verse using the Strong's Concordance. All the right tools to study the Bible, all in one place. The CBN Bible, available at cbn.com/Bible or the iTunes App Store.
It has the power to influence weight loss, boost your immune system, and improve brain function.
We've seen an explosion of data on the role of the gut microbiome in health.
The free Build a Better Gut booklet reveals the latest information about the gut microbiome. You'll discover how your gut affects the rest of your health.
The gut microbiome has been linked to depression and cancer and heart disease.
Learn how to build a stronger, healthier gut.
The microbiome, if it's in good composition, are really protecting us all the time from more invasive things.
Get the Build a Better Gut booklet, free from the Christian Broadcasting Network. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com/buildabettergut.
You need to make sure that your microbes are working with you, not against you.
And if you order online, you'll get immediate access to the Build a Better Gut series, a digital copy of the booklet, and related bonus material. Build a Better Gut today. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com/buildabettergut for your free copy.
Here, we're committed to a heritage of rigorous scholarship dating back over 1,000 years.
And to a faith tradition dating back 1,000 more.
This is how we create a culture of inquiry where no topic is off limits.
And a culture of hope.
Anything's possible!
It's Christian leadership.
And it's changing the world for the better.
It's higher learning.
It's greater knowing.
It's what makes us whole.
It's what makes us Regent.
Get the top political news and analysis from Washington on Faith Nation, tonight at 6 Eastern, only on the CBN News Channel.
Welcome back. Archaeologists in Israel believe they have found the biblical location where David hid from King Saul. CBN News Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl takes us to the Philistine town known as Ziklag.
Pottery dating to the time of King David, geography, and biblical history all point to Khirbet Arai as the Philistine town of Ziklag, where David escaped King Saul.
It's the best candidate in the entire region.
Over the years, experts have identified 11 different sites as possible locations for Ziklag, but archaeologists now believe they have evidence linking this site to the Ziklag of King David.
People debate about Ziklag already in the 7th century, so people really had interest about this site. If you're taking the biblical narrative, it's mentioned only in the time of King David.
The Bible says David fled to Achish at Gath or Gat with 600 men and 2 of his wives. Then David said to Achish, "If I have now found favor in your eyes, let them give me a place in some town in the country that I may dwell there. For why should your servant dwell in the royal city with you?" So Achish gave him Ziklag that day. Ziklag has belonged to the kings of Judah to this day.
Achish and Gat are about half-day walk from here. Ziklag cannot be far away in the Negev. It had to be close to Gat. Then we are told that Ziklag became part of the kings of Judah. So it cannot be on the coastal plain near Ashkelon and Ashdod. It had to be here on the border between the lowland and the highland. So this site perfectly matched these requirements.
Hebrew University archaeologist Yosef Garfinkel points out why this is different from other proposed locations.
This was a site which has Philistine background, and later it became Judean. And if you take the other site which has been proposed to be Ziklag, if they don't have a level from the time of David, how can they be Ziklag? And in the end, this is the only site which made the geographical and the historical together.
And then there's the pottery.
We are in the east side of the site, but it's magnificent because over here, this is the rooms that we found all the pottery vessels, the complete vessels, the massive destruction. This is the place that we collected the carbon-14 seeds, and this is the place that we're dating to the time of King David.
Workers here uncovered dozens of 3,000-year-old vessels.
All these vessels and 70 others all came from the level that is dated by radiocarbon sample to the early 10th century BC. So you can see here vessels that maybe King David used them, maybe he didn't, but this is the vessels which were used in the time of King David.
The Bible also describes the burning of Ziklag while David and his men were out at war. Archaeologist Sa'ar Ganor says even signs of that attack are clear.
The period is correct, and the pottery vessel in the destruction is great for us, not for them. And it means that we have all the connection to the Bible, to David, to the 10th century. And now we can say that we have a lot of points on the map that connecting to the 10th century BCE. It means that Judea, the kingdom of Judah was here before 3,000 years.
12 years ago, we didn't have even one archaeological site from the time of King David in all Israel. And then people start debating maybe David never existed and he's just a mythological figure, or maybe he existed but he was only a Bedouin sheikh living in a tent, so nothing was really left from his period.
Now with this second site in the Judean hills linked to King David, Garfinkel believes more sites will be uncovered to support the history of King David and the biblical narrative. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Khirbet Arai, Ziklag, Israel.
Amazing story. Well, still ahead, the fighting in Syria is still underway 8 years after a brutal war began to engulf that country, and as regional powers jockey for influence and power. We'll bring you an inside look at that terrible conflict.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com. Want to be a part of a community that inspires your spiritual growth while winning prizes? The all-new MyCBN app. Connect with the community for prayer and encouragement. Track and set spiritual goals. Enjoy conversation starters with friends and family. And collect points to win prizes. The all-new MyCBN app. A great place to belong. Download the app at cbn.com/mobile. Grow, connect, have fun. The all-new MyCBN app.
Watch breaking news, in-depth exclusive stories and programs, from health to entertainment, you won't find anywhere else. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. Enjoy credible news reporting from around the world. Discover inspiring programs and stories of hope, all in one place, from a Christian perspective. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. Check your local listings or visit cbnnewschannel.com.
Come home to the sounds of Southern Gospel from CBN Radio. You'll enjoy a rich Southern blend of bluegrass, classic gospel, and Southern gospel favorites like the Gaithers, the Crab Family, and bluegrass sounds like Mountain Faith. So make yourself at home with the all-new CBN Southern Gospel, now available at cbnradio.com.
Britain and France have agreed to send more troops to Syria to allow the United States to withdraw its forces from the country. This comes as Syrian forces backed by Russia and Iran continue to pound the last rebel-held stronghold. In this week's episode of World Beat, George Thomas speaks with a Syrian journalist who has documented up close the 8-year civil war in that country.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to World Beat, where we show you what's happening in the world and how you can pray about it. A peaceful uprising against Syria's dictator, Bashar al-Assad, in 2011 turned into a full-scale civil war. 8 years later, that battle continues to rage in pockets of Syria as forces loyal to the regime try to retake areas under rebel control. A human rights group says at least 544 civilians have been killed and more than 2,000 people injured since Syrian forces, backed by Russia, launched an offensive in April against part of rebel-held Idlib province in the northeast part of the country. A spokesperson with the Syrian Network for Human Rights accuses the Russian military and its Syrian ally of deliberately targeting civilians during the offensive. Russia and Syria dismissed those claims, saying their assault is justified by the presence of al-Qaeda-linked militants in the province. My next guest is joining me from Istanbul, Turkey. He is Asad Hana, a Syrian journalist who has been covering the conflict from the very beginning. Sir, thank you so much for coming on the show. So what's happening right now in Idlib province?
Actually, in Idlib and Aleppo countryside, there's escalation from the Syrian army backed by the Iranian militias and Russian air forces. So there is started to be deliberated attacks on the hospitals and the health infrastructure, like the white helmet centers and the hospitals and the medical points, to destroy all way of lives there and to make the life of the civilians miserable. So I can say that the humanitarian situation in northwest Syria is very, very bad.
Can you talk about the impact that 8 years of civil war has had on your country?
Of course, as it started as a revolution against the dictator Bashar al-Assad, and that turned to be a very complicated situation now in Syria. There is more than 500,000 people killed by the Syrian regime. There is more than 200,000 people in the prisons. We don't know if they are alive or they are dead people.
Syrians are beginning to return home after fleeing the fighting in 2011, right? In different parts of Syria, people are coming back home.
I don't think people can go back home from the people who were against the regime. But there were people who were not against the regime but went out of Syria just because they want to do work or to do something. So they went out of Syria and they were supporting the government. So those people can use it to go back home and use it to go to visit Damascus time to time. So they don't have problem there. But if anyone from the people who were against the regime, or anyone, even if he was just from area against the regime, and there were many reports about many people who went back to Syria, they thought it's safe, and they got arrested, and nobody know about them anything.
What are Russia and Iran's ambitions today in Syria?
The Iranians want to do their project, who started in Iran, Iraq, Lebanon, and now in Syria. They are sending the Iranian militias. They are building this religious atmosphere in the country, and we saw that happening in Deir ez-Zor and in Damascus now. And the Russians have their economical plan, and they had now they took many of the coastal line point to make it as a port for their shipments, and they also having big benefits in eastern Syria and eastern Homs city from the phosphate and the fuel oil there.
How can we pray for your country?
We should all pray for the people in the prisons. We should all pray for people who are suffering. There's more than I think 200,000 people who fled from Hama and Idlib countryside. They are now living in the nowhere in the northwest of Syria under the olive trees. So we should all support them and pray for them. And also I would specify that we should pray for the civilians and for the humanitarian workers in Syria who are deliberately targeted by the airstrikes, like the white helmet and another doctors and all the health workers and first responders.
Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, folks, that is it for today's edition of World Beat. Until next time, goodbye and God bless you.
Coming up, a look at tonight's Studio 5 program, a special edition focusing on contemporary worship music.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
Administering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to CBNNewsChannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News.
Check out the CBN News Daily Rundown podcast each weekday with me, Caitlin Burke. Click on the show tab at CBNNews.com where you can listen and subscribe.
This week's Studio 5 is bringing us a special edition focusing on contemporary worship music. Here's that from Graham with a preview.
It's who you are. You can say we're headed to the throne room. And sitting down with the artists behind some of our favorite worship anthems.
Your grace is enough. Your grace is enough.
It's a Studio 5 worship special.
You can see Ephraim's interviews with worship artists Kim Walker-Smith, Pat Barrett, and Matt Maher on tonight's Studio 5. It's at 9:30 Eastern on the CBN News Channel. That's going to do it for today's first edition of Newswatch. You can find more on the issues you care about most at cbnnews.com and can watch CBN News programs anytime on our CBN News Channel. Also, tell us what you think about the stories you've seen here by emailing newswatch@cbn.com or talk to us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hope you'll join us next time. Have a great day.